Welcome to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast, where we discuss all things wellness.
I'm Eleni Welch, nutritionist.
And I'm Kay Boyer, health enthusiast. Welcome back, Renegades.
Welcome, Renegades.
Welcome. We have another guest this week, one of our favorite guests.
And now, Deena Thompson, welcome back to the podcast. Yeah. So excited to have you on again. So the first time, so we interviewed you, at the beginning of our podcast. So
like a year ago.
Close to a year ago.
Yeah.
And then we got to have you on again, a couple months ago. And you were our first repeat guest.
Yes.
And now you are our first triple repeat.
Yes.
Repeat.
Yes. That means we really, really like you.
Our first third time guest.
Yes.
Now
we covered how intermittent fasting and breakfast. Was that maybe those were
the better breakfast.
The better breakfast. And now what do we got this time?
Today we get to talk about a type of modified fasting where Deena is going to tell us all about the benefits you can get from this modified fast that kind of mimic a full fast, right?
Oh, that's awesome. And for our listeners that would just be jumping on this time that doesn't quite know you, do a really quick what you do and who you are, and then we can jump into questions.
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Okay, absolutely. So I am Deena Thompson, and I went to school with Eleni, got our master's degree in nutrition and functional medicine. And then I went on and got my license so that I could work with people one-on-one. So I have a lot of one-on-one practice that I work a lot with people who struggle with gut health issues. That's where I kind of started out. I just couldn't eat anything without feeling absolutely miserable. And it was a really long journey figuring out what the root cause of that was. And getting to the bottom of the whole autoimmune going on and fatigue. It was a really long journey for me before I ever even got to the master's program in nutrition. And the diet and lifestyle piece really changed my life, and it just lit a fire under me. I was so passionate, and I just didn't want anybody else to have to spend 10 years before they got an answer like I did. Yeah. And so I decided to go to school and get my license, and really wanted to help people figure out the root cause of their problems and fix it using, really relatively simple diet and lifestyle therapies that really work. So that's what got me into it.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
And I know our episodes with you have been so helpful to our population of listeners. We've gotten a ton of positive feedback on those episodes. So we're really excited to have you back on and dive into today's topic with you. So Kay and I might interrupt you with questions throughout the way, but I'm just going to let you kind of take the mic, Deena, and walk us through this topic of modified fasting and what that means and how people can implement it in their lives today.
Yeah. So maybe I can start with where I came across modified fasting.
Please do.
So after school, we did like a year-long, or actually mine was about a year and a half, sort of internship where I was shadowing a doctor. I was working in a clinic in California, and she specialized in treating patients with Alzheimer's and certain other types of dementia, a lot of brain-based health issues. So the population was definitely older, and the therapies were a little more intensive. So I don't know if your audience is familiar with the Bredesen protocol or any of that. Okay. So
I am, but
I'm not, but that's okay.
I've actually reached out to him to be a guest on our podcast,
cool.
And he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but I would love to have that. So please walk us through that and introduce that topic too.
Okay. So he wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's, and basically did a ton of research into this idea that you can have two different people with Alzheimer's that didn't get it for the same reason. And so it doesn't make sense that their treatment is the same, right? So if one person, the root cause of their dementia was a lifelong struggle with, unmanaged diabetes, blood sugar dysregulation, or something like that, then the solution is to address that cause. And when you have another person who maybe worked in like a a toxic industry or like sprayed pesticides their whole life or worked with heavy metals or they're a coal miner or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they were exposed to some toxin that damaged their brain and that led to those same kind of cognitive decline. But that person needs a very different treatment approach than somebody else, right? So the conventional approach to something like dementia is that we're treating the like tau tangles and the like all the processes that are the deterioration that's happening in the brain. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, we got to step back and we've got to figure out what caused that deterioration in the first place and get it from there. So he wrote this really amazing book, and fasting is a big part of some of the therapies that are proposed. But with an older population, you have to be really careful because fasting can lead to too much weight loss and it can lead to muscle loss because when we're in our older years, we don't have hormones to protect us from breaking down muscle when we're fasting. And so you can just kind of make that person more frail. And so the type of fasting that we incorporated in the clinic was what's called a modified fast. And this is based off of the research of a completely different doctor, not a medical doctor, a PhD doctor, Dr. Walter Longo. And his research was, he's really interested in studying longevity. How do we get humans to live not only longer, but we increase their health span, the number of years that they live disease-free, right?
That.
And healthy, because that's all we really want. Like, I don't want to live to 120 if I'm miserable and feel terrible, right?
Right.
So it's all about extending health span. Yep. And his research led him to fasting, that fasting time after time after time in, worms, in mice, in humans, we see that it extends lifespan and health span, that it creates some pretty great health advantages. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's when it's enough of a stimulus, but not too much, right? Of course, you can go too far with fasting. We call that starvation.
Right.
And that's not good for anybody either. That will definitely shorten your lifespan.
Right.
So there's this happy place of like not too much, not too little. And what Dr. Longo found was that prolonged fasting, where you're fasting for multiple days, had really unique benefits. And you don't tap into them until about the third day of fasting in humans. Mm-hmm. So in mice, of course, they have much faster metabolism, so they get there much quicker. But for humans, it takes about 3 days to get into this state where you are massively spring cleaning on the inside. So you activate a process called autophagy. Mm-hmm. And this is an intracellular. So inside each of your cells, you have these little like Pac-Men that go around and like gobble up junky protein and broken DNA and like misfolded items, just like all the waste and debris that collects inside of a cell that slows it down. And it gobbles all of this up, and then those proteins get recycled. And your body can take them apart and rebuild whatever it wants. So sometimes I'll use the analogy of like Lego blocks, right? So proteins are individual amino acids that are built together. So if you think of like a bunch of different Legos of different colors and you built a castle, and then the castle got broken, the bridge got damaged, right? It needs to be torn apart into its little pieces and then rebuilt into something new. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, you have to take it apart, right? And that's autophagy. It's like taking all of those things apart, recycling them, and then you have all these individual Legos and you can build whatever you want out of that.
That's a great way to describe that process.
Yes, that's really cool. I mean, I want to like stop eating right now. This sounds awesome.
Deena's the queen of metaphors.
Yes.
So with that, so autophagy is something that's happening inside of us regularly. It's most active when we're in a fasted state. It's most activated by exercise, and it's most activated by sleeping. So when you're sleeping, you're also fasting. So that's when autophagy for most of us on a day-to-day basis is going to be most active. Wow. But over time, it just can't keep up with the amount of like waste and wear and tear that we accumulate as we get older. So in order to stimulate autophagy on like a really deep level, fasting is the way to do it. And it's this prolonged fasting that allows us to do that. But like I mentioned before, the catch is that prolonged fasting is risky for older. It can be risky for older adults or anybody whose health is maybe very poor, because their body may tear down healthy tissue rather than just the junky tissue.
Sure.
And so in order to steer them in the right direction, Dr. Longo did all this research and was like, how can we mimic fasting without making people actually fast? And he figured it out, which is like,
amazing.
What? It's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the benefits, and you still get to eat.
Right.
So he figured out what it was to what it took to mimic fasting, and created basically a type of formula. So the amount of calories that are eaten are absolutely limited. So it does not feel like feasting. It does feel like fasting, but you do get to eat every single day.
Nice.
And still be fasting and get these benefits of autophagy on a really deep level. The other piece is that it's very protein limited. So the amount of protein that you can eat is very, very small. And that's intentional. It's the absence of protein that basically makes your body think it's starving, makes it think it's fasting, that there's nothing coming in, because you've limited its like building blocks. And so in order to find the protein that it needs, it has to scavenge for it. And it's going to break down all the junky, worn out proteins, bacterial proteins, viral proteins. It's this like massive cleanup of all the junk, all the waste, all the debris that you wanted to get rid of anyway. And it's reusing that in a really healthy way. So the research on this is actually so cool that they've done MRI scans on people. And after doing a modified fast, which is for 5 days, their organs are actually smaller. There's that much waste and debris that gets cleaned up that like the liver, the brain, the heart, the stomach, it's like shrunk.
Wow.
So way.
A real spring cleaning, you know, the kind you do where you're like getting rid of cleaning out the garage and getting rid of all that waste. So it's really powerful. I really just don't think there's anything quite as powerful as fasting for triggering your own body's innate healing response.
Wow.
This is really great timing. I just saw, do you know the work? This sounds very familiar with the work of Dr. David Sinclair. He's a longevity scientist. I just heard him the other day on a TikTok or something, and he was talking about you need to do at least a 3 to 4 day fast to start triggering the autophagy, like you said. And so my husband and I are going to start this. And I'm so excited that we can still eat on it. So I'm going to get all the details from you because he had tons of questions. So I'm going to channel his questions to you. I'm really excited. This is such good timing. I love it. And also, on a personal note, I jump between keto or not. I feel really good in my brain when I'm on keto. Anyway, but after I'm on it for a while, I start to feel off. And a part of me is wondering, like, and that's what Eleni and I have talked about, like me cycling it. Because I almost like that, like toxic protein or something. I feel like I do need to flush it out. So I'm really excited for this. So I want all the details. I can't wait.
Yeah. And if you've done any kind of fasting before or followed a ketogenic diet, you will transition into fasting very quickly. Okay. So you might sail through it pretty good.
Good. And the fact that you can still eat through it, I'm like, easy peasy, guys. I can do that. That's better than nothing.
Well, it does make it a lot easier.
Yes. Okay. One question then on that topic is my husband, I heard a fast where you can just do bone broth, but I didn't know if the collagen in that is a protein or not. So I don't know the science of it. So can you do bone broth on this?
No.
No, because it would be the protein. Okay.
I actually have a lot to say on this particular topic because I am not a fan of bone broth fasts or juice cleanses.
Oh.
One, I think that people feel better because fasting is an incredible therapy, and it's a really powerful tool. Juice cleansing, I'm not a fan of because you're getting like a constant blood sugar roller coaster ride.
Yes, blood sugar, yes.
In the juice. Unless it was only straight green juice and you had no fruits in there,
right?
You're just going to be going like this all day, like spike, crash, spike, crash, spike, crash.
Yes, that's true.
I just don't think that that's a really healthy way to go. But I know people do feel better when they just give their gut a rest. The bone broth, I mean, is not going to have the same blood sugar spiking effect, but it's basically just a very low calorie. It's not quite the same. So with modified fast, this has actually got 20 years of clinical research on it about what's the exact formula for mimicking fasting and what's the safest way to do this. And so the calories, like I said, are very specific, but so is the amount of protein, the amount of carbohydrate, and the amount of fat. Dr. Longo did a lot of research, like adjusting each one till he got it just right to mimic fasting. And you're not going to get that from a single food, like just bone broth or just juice cleanse. With the case of bone broth, there is going to be protein, some amount of protein, although it would be very small, unless you were drinking a ton of it. So as long as there's protein, you might not actually mimic fasting in the same way. That autophagy.
And I think too, like, with something like a bone broth fast, if you were doing that, the outcome that you're aiming for is totally different than what you're going for with the modified fast that you'll walk us through, Deena. So I think like
if
there can be
is your goal,
right?
Don't do bone broth.
Like there's some benefits to just kind of clearing out your body if you have a damaged gut and putting in bone broth and helping the gut healing process, but like that's totally different, like a totally different aim and outcome than I think what you would be going for with this. So can you walk us through some of the building blocks of the modified fast and what it looks like maybe some of those macronutrient ratios and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the protein amount is kind of the key point. The calorie content and the protein are the biggest factors into mimicking fasting. So what we found is that 725 calories is the daily intake for modified fast. The first day is actually higher. We start at 1100 and then taper and then switch into the 725 for each of the 4 days. So that's a typical like large meal, I guess, is one meal, but you can get really fancy with it. And what I've done is created a whole program based off of these fasting meal plans where you get a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner, and they're really filling meals.
Nice.
A way to increase satiety, and also as a nutritionist, like pack as much good nutrition in there with as few calories as we have.
Yes.
And of course, that means a lot of vegetables, right?
Right.
Low calorie, high nutrient foods. So those are the protein amount is 9% of the total calories. It ends up being like 15 grams of protein total for the entire day.
Kay would I would do great. Kay would die.
I would have like 2 bites of my steak and then I'd be done. Okay. Yep. We're getting autophagy. Let's do it.
Yeah. The other piece, so it's all a modified fast is entirely plant-based. And that's because animal foods are building foods. And they actually send your body a signal to build, repair, create stuff. Plants are great detoxifiers, but they're not great builders. And so, from a day-to-day perspective, an omnivorous diet is kind of the easiest way to cover all of your bases. Right. But when we're fasting, we want to just stick with the plants because they're going to, one, be low in protein pretty much across the board. There are some plants that are higher protein, but even inside the fasting meal plans, I have like chia seeds and nuts and edamame and like beans, these plants that are considered high protein plants. You can still even get away with some of those in the fasting meal plans because they're really not that actually high in protein.
Right.
And it's the absence of like methionine. There's certain amino acids that are in animal foods that tell our body that we have enough to like build tissue. And so when we take that off the table, your body goes into like that repair and fasted state much easier. So the modified fast is low in calories, very low in protein, and plants only for the 5 days.
Wow.
And then I guess the other piece of it would just be the carbs and the fat. And those are actually pretty equal. So it's like 44% fat and 47% carbohydrate. So it sounds all very sciencey, but what I ended up doing at the clinic was the doctor was like, hey, we want to do this kind of modified fast for our patients, but a lot of them have food sensitivities, and a lot of them, can you like find a way for them to make food at home and still get the benefits of this modified fast? So she charged me with that, and I went to work and created like this minestrone soup and a salad and stuff that they could make at home with fresh food. And as long as they followed the meal plan, right, they measured out their soup, they're eating a certain, like it's like 1 1/3 cup, and your salad, you get this much, that kind of a thing, then they could mimic the fast at home using real whole food and get all of those same benefits. So that's where I got into modified fasting and started creating these meal plans. Because what Dr. Longo did is he created a kit, a meal kit that follows his formula that he discovered, and it's called Prolon. I don't know if
I'm familiar with that.
Saw that, yes.
Yeah, and he calls it the fasting mimicking diet. Cool. So you buy one of the kits, and then you just eat what's in the box on day 1, and then on day 2 you eat what's in the box on day 2, and it's like a little pack of crackers and a dehydrated soup. And I found it to just be a little uninteresting to eat.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I felt like I was starving.
Yes, yes.
And I was like, I can do better.
Yes.
I took the formula, the protein, carbs, fat, calories, and like the ingredients, no animal foods, and made up meal plans. And to date, I have 10 of them. I have like an anti-cancer plan, and I have a gut repair plan where it's specific foods that will help enhance, those benefits, but every single one of them follows the fasting formula.
Wow.
That's so awesome.
I am very interested, like I said, like my husband and I wanting to do this. Is there a way that we can do you have it online where I can purchase it from you, or do you walk people through it, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So there's actually a lot that goes into doing a modified fast. There is the 5-day fasting period. There's also some prep work that I think is really helpful for easing somebody into a fast. It helps them feel a lot better on their fast and have more energy during their fast and just kind of have a smooth transition. And then on the tail end, the refeeding period is really important. So while the fasting meal plan is low in protein, and that's very intentional, when we refeed, we're actually really protein focused. We prioritize protein at every meal. So fasting is the tearing down, the breaking down, the cleaning up, and the refeeding is the repair and the regeneration. So one analogy that I like to use is like fasting is actually a lot like a really hard workout. If you were to go and do a really hard workout, when you're exercising, you are breaking down muscle. You are increasing lactic acid buildup, right? Like you're doing all the damage actually when you exercise, and it's in the recovery after that exercise that you actually get stronger, right?
Cool.
So just like with a modified fast, that refeeding period, I think is just as important as the fast, just like your recovery period and getting enough sleep and getting good nutrition after a hard workout is going to enhance the benefits of your workout, right?
Wow.
So the program that I've built is a 10-day program that takes people through the 5-day fast, but then we have a 2-day prep and a 3-day refeeding kind of on each end. So it walks them from start to finish through how to do a modified fast. And then I have lots of tips on there. Like, Kay, if you're doing keto, you probably know a lot about the importance of electrolytes during fasting or during the ketogenic diet. Like if people don't get enough electrolytes, they can feel a little bit flu-like or headaches or fatigue. Yeah. So that's something I coach a lot on, is how to get enough electrolytes throughout your fast. It makes a night and day difference in how people feel. Cool. I have so many clients that are able to just kind of sail through the 5-day fasting period. It's challenging. It's absolutely challenging, but very, very doable. And you get to eat 3 delicious meals every day and still get all the repair, the gut repair, the repair inside each and every cell that's going on. Yeah. And this is like a built-in system. You're just activating it.
How do people feel? Like, can you like still do work? Because my husband's funny. He's like, we were going to do a 3 or 4 day fast because we heard about the autophagy. And so he was like, well, let's just pick 3 days on the work week. And I was like, honey, I don't think you should be going to work when we're like fasting like this. Like, I think it needs to be like, Friday and then the weekend. And he was like, oh yeah, I always kind of forget. I always think I can just like push through it and just do it with willpower. But with this 5-day and it being more of a mimicking, is it something where you can still go to work, but you feel a little bit more fatigued, or should you just take it easy, Yeah.
I mean, I wish I had an absolute straight answer for you. Everybody's experience is a little bit different.
Okay.
I would say that most people, if they stay on top of their electrolytes and hydration, feel really good and have enough. I've never actually had somebody that was like, I couldn't go to work today because I was so tired. I've never had that from anybody that's on the fast. So most people are able to continue going to work and taking care of their kids and doing all of their regular responsibilities. They may feel a little bit lower in energy. It just kind of depends where they're at in their like metabolic health. People who are really good at fat burning tend to feel really good and have lots of energy. And for those of us who maybe struggle with that, who are more sugar burners and are struggling to make that switch into fat burning, because your body fat is what's going to supply most of your energy during your fast, which is great because it acts as a really effective fat loss program that actually specifically targets stored body fat, right? Where was I going with this?
Going to work,
how you feel,
maintaining your daily activities.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, daily activity. So energy. If you're stuck in like sugar burn, you have a lot of blood sugar fluctuations throughout the day, need to eat all the time in order to have energy, then you're probably going to have a little bit of a bumpy transition, and it may feel like you might feel a little bit tired. On the flip side, I have people who are like, I wish I could fast all the time. I feel amazing. And I've had several people now who've done the program that are like, can I keep going? Like, I don't want to stop. I feel amazing. I'm sharp. I'm focused. Like I'm getting so much work done. I'm not even thinking about food, who just have an amazing experience. So it can kind of go both ways, but I think everybody seems to have enough energy to definitely get through a work day and do their regular thing. Now, the only thing I would say you would want to dial back on is the exercise. So I encourage everybody in my program to exercise every single day, but more like going for a walk or doing yoga or something that's just really low key and something that feels relaxing, feels good to your body. You would definitely want to avoid any kind of high intensity exercise. So if it's like a HIIT workout or a spin class or CrossFit, like you don't want to do that when you're fasting. Right. It would be too stressful on your body.
So I think there's like a couple things I want to highlight. One is that this level of like clinical intervention is good to do with the help of somebody who is a practitioner, right?
Yeah.
Somebody like you who can like
this.
walk a person through.
Yes.
So I think that that's important for listeners to always keep in mind too. But could you walk us through, walk our listeners through a little bit? What does the preparing period, what should people do to prepare for a fast like this? And then with the refeeding period, what's important to keep in mind with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the preparation, it's pretty simple. I start them with the hydration, like getting them on good hydration plan and taking electrolytes. So we'll use I have a homemade electrolyte recipe. I also have some brands that I recommend that they add to their water once a day, just to get them started so that they have an easy, smooth transition and they're not coming from low and then having to build up. That's one piece. The other really big piece is just people can feel tempted to pretend like it's the last meal they're ever going to eat before they start. And so that dinner before, they're like pizza, beer, brownies, like I'm going to eat ice cream. They eat till like midnight, and then like, oh, it's not officially I'm not fasting yet, or whatever. And that is, I think, a big mistake that you really end up shooting yourself in the foot, because you end up with more hunger and you end up with a much bumpier transition into fasting. It actually takes you longer to get into a fasted state because you just have way more food to burn through before your body actually switches. So you're not going to get into that autophagy until maybe like a half a day or a day later than everybody else, which means you're not going to get as many of the healing, regenerative, and reparative benefits if you kind of do the pre-fast binge sort of situation.
Yes, right.
So like just eating a reasonable amount of food and stopping 3 hours before you go to bed, just like I recommend on a regular basis, I think is really smart. And then that last meal before you start your fast, or the night before, I recommend a low carbohydrate meal. So low carb in and low carb out. And that is going to help decrease glycogen stores, which helps you switch into fasting a little bit faster. So glycogen is your stored sugar, and you have it mainly in your muscles and your liver. Your body has to deplete that tank, deplete the glycogen before it switches. It goes, oh, I'm fasting, right? The tank has to get empty first. So by eating a lower carbohydrate meal before your fast, you kind of already emptied the tank halfway maybe. And then the next day you're going to lower it a little bit more. And it just allows you to have this like step down into fasting rather than like a cannonball into fasting.
Right.
You just have a nice smooth transition. So I find that just feels so much easier on the body, and it really just you just don't even notice. It's just very gentle.
Right.
When you're on the fast, I know like coffee and tea, are those okay on it? And then depends what you add to the tea or coffee, or tell me about those drinks.
Yeah. So in my program, since it's all homemade food, all of the calories are accounted for in the meal plan.
Okay.
And so there are only 0-calorie beverages are allowed, and no artificial sweeteners. So no like Coke Zeros on the plan. But stevia is the only approved sweetener that can be used. So if you can definitely have coffee and tea, but you can't add like MCT oil or creamers or any kind of sweetener to it other than stevia, in order to allow for all the calories to be in the meals, because that's just a much more satisfying way to get calories.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Oh, this is like brilliant. I am so proud of your brain, Deena, like coming up with these like real foods we can make at home to do a fast, but you still get to eat. I mean, this is awesome. Like,
so no, it's pretty cool.
So then for that refeeding period and beyond, like once people complete this fast and go into the refeeding period and then beyond, what are some important principles for them to keep in mind?
Yeah. So inside of my program, I have a whole refeeding workshop that we teach, during the program, and then a guidebook and a recipe plan. So I'll touch on each of the points, but there's quite a bit of information there. The first thing that we prioritize is protein, and everybody in the program calculates their specific protein requirements for the refeeding period. And then that refeeding period is typically half the length of your fast. So we fast for 5 days, we refeed for about 3. So they're going to try and hit their protein target every day for the 3 days. And that's going to allow your body, everything that was broken down and removed gets to be rebuilt and repaired. Another really cool thing that happens during a fast besides autophagy is actually the activation of stem cells. So this is incredible because this isn't something we get really a whole lot of, but fasting will activate stem cells. And then during the refeeding period, you're supplying the nutrients for those stem cells to grow into brand new muscle cell or liver cell or gut cell, right? So you're rebuilding tissue from brand new cells. So when I say regenerative, I'm like, literally, you are replacing old tissue with brand new from stem cell cells. So these cells are going to be, fresh new baby cells. They're working optimally from the beginning, and you're clearing away all the stuff that wasn't working. So very regenerative. And that activation of stem cells, I think, is another really unique aspect of this type of fasting, and why they're studying it a lot in like cancer research and autoimmune disease and things like that, because you're actually replacing dysfunctional cells with healthy new ones.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty cool thing. So the protein is allowing you to do that, right? To rebuild from stem cells. The other piece we focus on during the refeeding is, like I said, low carb in, low carb out. So we control, I say control carbohydrates. So you want to have carbohydrates, but we want to choose whole food forms. So fruits, vegetables, beans and legumes, and then there's a half cup serving of grains if you want them, but they're kind of limited just because they tend to be they pack a much higher carbohydrate punch. So really we want to maintain the blood sugar regulation. After a fast, you are like exquisitely blood sugar sensitive. So a small amount of carbohydrate is going to have a much bigger impact on your blood sugar than it would normally, because after a fast, you're just super insulin sensitive and very sensitive to carbohydrate. So there's there's not necessarily a limit on carbohydrate. It's really just quality and over quantity, So we're avoiding sugar, we're avoiding like bread or anything made out of flour during that 3-day refeeding period as a way to maintain the blood sugar benefits and keep your blood sugar from kind of going a little wild afterwards. And the third piece that we focus on during the refeed are hitting an omega-3 target. So omega-3s can have a very beneficial anabolic effect, meaning like a rebuilding. So when you're building all of that new tissue, omega-3s help facilitate that process. They're also very anti-inflammatory. And one of the benefits of fasting is a 50% reduction in inflammation in 5 days.
Wow.
It's incredible. Cool. Yeah. And we want to ride that wave as long as possible, right? Keeping inflammation levels low. So the omega-3s help with that. And a lot of people are already deficient. So it's something we really focus on during the refeeding period is getting omega-3s. And we're going to get those from cold water fatty fish. We're going to get those from nuts and seeds. And some foods like soy are kind of a little bit gray area foods, but they definitely have some omega-3s in them. So we're going to focus on getting 3 grams a day during the refeeding period. And then I have them transition to just 1 gram a day. And I have supplemental options in the guidebook for people who want to go that route. But I also, in the refeeding meal plan, I've just kind of built them in. So if they follow the meal plan, they'll hit their target. So awesome. Yeah, keeping carbohydrates under control, focusing on the protein. And then there's definitely a gut repair side of things. that I think is really important. So one of the cool things about a modified fast is that it actually changes the gut microbiome in a beneficial way. So I know you've talked a lot about the gut microbiome on your podcast, and it has widespread effects, right? This is not just what's going on in our gut, and this is not just about gas and bloating and constipation and diarrhea or anything. What they found is that when people do a modified fast, they see blood pressure reductions. And the scientists were like, where is this coming from? They finally pinned it back to changes in the gut are actually lowering the blood pressure.
Wow.
So it's what's happening. It's like this, reorganization that happens in the gut that is leading to some of these cardiovascular benefits, boosts in heart health and reductions in blood pressure and reductions in cholesterol that happen when you do a modified fast, like once a month. So you can use it as a very therapeutic tool to reduce blood pressure, cholesterol, and have some like anti-cancer benefits that are really powerful and really well studied. So that's really cool.
I think that brings like a couple important points too to touch back on. So first is, I know in our like breakfast episode with Deena, and of course our original intermittent fasting episode, one thing we talked about was the importance of getting like a lot of protein at that first meal of the day. So what I don't want people to get lost in is like, oh, but the fast is low protein, so then why am I having high protein meals? You know what I mean? Because there's what we're talking about is a therapeutic
clean out,
yeah. Right? So it's not that protein in and of itself is bad, of course, because as Deena has explained, it's what helps our body build and repair and heal. It's that it can be therapeutic to take a break from the protein and let your body clean out any of the damaged proteins, misfolded proteins, DNA, all of those things that are made from protein. You need to give your body a break so it has a chance to clear them out. So a couple of follow-up questions for you, Deena, is like you mentioned, some people feel so good, they just want to keep the fast going. So how often is it, like, what's the most beneficial frequency to do a fast?
Yes, that's
like
what
this?
I wondered. Yes.
And for people who wanted to stay on it, is it like, can you go beyond the 5 days, or is it better to do the 5 days and then like go cycle on it again later?
Yeah, such great questions.
Those are good questions.
So absolutely. So the research on this that Dr. Longo has done, and these are clinical studies in actual people, which I think is always really important to point out. There's lots of studies out there that are on little mice or little worms, and they don't apply to humans. The research that we have on humans is that doing 3 to 4 consecutive cycles, meaning one modified fast that's 5 days long each month for 3 or 4 consecutive months, is what we have about a decade of research on, showing that it's safe and really effective. And when I say effective, it's effective for fat loss. So in the 3 to 4 months, people lose an average of 5 to 11 pounds. I've had people lose as much as 30 pounds. It's kind of like, if you have a lot to lose, you'll lose more. If you don't, you probably won't. I've never lost weight doing a fast, but I feel like I'm already at a healthy weight. And so like maybe I lose a pound and then gain it as soon as I eat again, and I've got that water back in my body and the glycogen back in my body. So fat loss, it's really effective for the 3 to 4 cycles is kind of the prescribed amount that we see. Reductions in cholesterol and triglycerides. We see big reductions in fasting insulin, better blood sugar stability, and the inflammation. 50% reduction in inflammation in the 5 days. But then when you do repeated cycles, you basically maintain that. And just as an example, I had somebody in my program, I actually just finished up one of these 10-day resets. And I had a lady in my program who had done 3 or 4 cycles. And then she had lost 30 pounds. She had reversed her type 2 diabetes in 4 months. It was absolutely incredible. She got her A1C from an 8 down to a 5.5 in those 3 months, right? So 6.5 is the cutoff for type 2 diabetes. She was at an 8, right? So it was pretty poorly managed blood sugar. It was pretty bad for her. And then she didn't do any fast for 9 months. And she was really upset with herself because she had regained some of the weight. But when she went back to her doctor, she thought she was going to get the horrible news that her blood sugar was back up or whatever. And it had gone back up, but it only had gone up like a half a point to 6. So she was still didn't have the diabetes and had maintained those benefits, 9 months later, because she'd done the 3 consecutive fasts. Cool. So it's really therapeutic. And I think it's actually way more beneficial to do it that way than it is to just do one every once in a while. Mm-hmm. I think doing one like 2 to 4 times a year is a really great maintenance schedule, but I encourage everybody to do the 3 consecutive fasts, 1 each month first, mm-hmm. before you get into a maintenance phase, because I think that has the most therapeutic effect, and you'll really get a lot of progress in a short amount of time on your health goals. And in my program, so I run the program 2 different ways. I have the 10-day version, which allows people to just try it one time. And then I have my 4-month program, which is called the Fasting Fix. And we do 1 fast every month together. And we do before and after lab work, which is why I know how much her blood sugar improved and her insulin dropped and her cardiovascular markers improved and all of that, because I run before and after lab work on everybody that does it that way, and the results are outstanding.
That's awesome.
Cool. That's really cool.
And speaking of results, so you first kind of implemented this program in the clinic you were working in for that 1.5 years after school. What sort of results did you guys see in those clinics?
Yeah. So with the dementia patients in particular, fasting was definitely a challenge for a lot of them. Some of them had pretty advanced dementia where they needed caretakers. But for those that still had their wits about them and were still fairly independent, mm-hmm. we saw a lot of progress with the fasting, more clarity. We would bring them in for an appointment, and they would be answering the questions instead of their partner or caretaker that brought them there. They would engage, they would look you in the eye, they wouldn't ask you to repeat, mm-hmm. So there were really subtle things, but life-changing for somebody who is in that situation, right? So, and then the lab work that we did was definitely in their metabolic markers, right? Better blood sugar stability, lower insulin, right? Lower inflammation, all of those things that accelerate the aging process and accelerate any kind of disease process, whether it's in the brain or anywhere else in the body. So when you lower those, you're just going to slow down that decline and give somebody some of their vitality back.
Because a lot of, what we call Alzheimer's could also be called these days type 3 diabetes. That's what we've heard, right? So I think the important key is the balancing of the blood sugar. And like you mentioned with the one client you had that went through the 3 months of fasting and then didn't do it for 9 months, I think it's so important to realize how much it improved her insulin sensitivity, so that even after 9 months of not following the fasting, she still retained clearly that insulin sensitivity where her hemoglobin A1C didn't jump up more than half a point, even not following the principles of the fasting, the modified fasting, which is just cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It was really cool. She was in tears. She was so excited. She didn't have to go back on metformin. And, her doctor was just like, what?
Yeah, right. Probably mind blown. I don't see this.
Slip them your card.
Yeah.
The doctor. So you touched on this earlier, but I wasn't sure. So for your fasting protocol, do you have different foods for let's say if you have cancer or if you have Alzheimer's or if it's just a general fasting, do you have a different sets of food for each person and they pick? Or when you do your fast, you all just do a general one, but you get to pick your meals? Or how does that work?
Yeah. So the way I have it set up currently is that there are 10 different meal plans for them to choose from. And all of the meal plans are the same amount of calories, protein, carbs, and fat. So they all follow the fasting formula. And then they get to choose the meal plan that works for them. Now, what I've done is all of the meal plans are made of nutritious foods, right? It's lots of vegetables and whole foods, and they have the high antioxidant. I've made sure that every meal plan is high in fiber, because one of the things that can happen when you cut the amount of food that you're eating that much is constipation, or just like sluggish bowels, simply because there's just not as much food in there to move through. So I've made sure all of the meal plans have about 30 grams of fiber. So like the amount you would eat normally in a day for making sure that they're getting also the detoxification benefits of fasting, which I haven't touched on yet. So every meal plan is healthy, and they're all going to be great options. What I've done with some of them, customizing some of them, is like the anti-cancer meal plan is really high. It includes ingredients that are high anti-cancer foods. So like lots of cruciferous vegetables, like broccoli and cauliflower and kale, because those are really great have some anti-cancer benefits. Berries and flax seeds, like foods that have known anti-cancer benefits, but those foods also show up in other meal plans. It's just going to be a little bit more focused on certain foods that are great for that. And then the gut repair one is like a low FODMAP meal plan. So people who get a lot of gas and bloating, the meal plan is going to exclude foods like onions and garlic and broccoli, right? It doesn't have any of those, because those create a lot of gas and bloating for people with a sensitive stomach. So that way people can it's just like an enhancement, right? The fasting is what's doing the magic, right? Yeah. That's what's lowering the blood pressure and the cholesterol and the insulin and balancing the blood sugar and creating all the repair and regeneration. Putting you into a fasted state is where that magic happens. The meal plans are just kind of an enhancement to provide some additional benefits, because
very cool.
Well, and then so you just mentioned too, because we haven't talked about it a whole lot, all the benefits of detoxing. Just can you walk us through high level some of those benefits of why we want to detox and what detoxing does in our body and why we need to have that?
Yeah. So a modified fast, I think, is a fantastic way to do a detoxification program that's really gentle and safe. The reason that I prefer that over something like a juice cleanse or something like that is because it is high in fiber, and we've got all those plants. The fiber actually binds onto the toxins that are released when you're in a fasted state. So let me step back just one bit and tell you how fasting increases detoxification. So anytime that we're in a fasted state, or even anytime we're in a significant calorie deficit, you are going to have the lipolysis, so an increase in the breakdown of your fat cells. And that makes absolute sense, right? Where are we going to get energy? That's why we have fat cells, right? So when you're not eating as many calories as your body needs, it's going to burn body fat to provide that energy. Body fat is the place that most toxins that we're exposed to get stored if we can't excrete them in a timely manner. So we're exposed to toxins every day. We even make them ourselves, right? Things like urea that you pee out, right? Those are toxins that if they built up in your system would make you very sick. And we get rid of them by peeing and pooping and exhaling and sweating, right? We get rid of toxins every day that way. But we can be exposed to toxins more than we can excrete them. And so if they get stored, they tend to get stored in our fat cells. It's kind of like the safest place for them to go. They're like as far away from your vital organs and tissues as it can be. So I think it's a really smart storage facility for excess toxins. When you fast, you're like opening up the floodgates, right? And those toxins actually get re-released into the bloodstream. And this is not theoretical. We actually have lots of research on this, that even animals like rodents, when in a fasted state, the amount of toxins go up in their bloodstream. And these are like PCBs and BPA and like all that stuff that are in plastics and car exhausts and all that stuff that we know is not great for us. We actually can measure it in the bloodstream. When somebody is in a fasted state, it goes up. And at first, this perplexed people and researchers, but they figured out where it was coming from. It's coming from their fat cells. Oh. So we get this increase in the release of toxins, and we want to make sure we grab that and get rid of it as fast as possible. So that's another one of the reasons that I made the meal plans higher fiber, because those toxins, they first go to the liver, and the liver gets an opportunity to dump them into the gut before sending out the rest of the blood to circulation. So the gut is a great place for us to bind toxins and excrete them. And so the fiber is a really good binder. It grabs onto things and makes sure that it makes its exit. And then the hydration piece during a fast is equally important, because a lot of toxins are excreted in the urine. The liver's job is to make them water soluble so that we can pee them out. So it's a great mechanism from like start to finish. The fasting allows the toxins to get released at a much higher rate than they would be normally. And then the gut is able to grab onto them and excrete them. And then the other thing that happens during a fasting actually increases the rate at which your detoxification enzymes work. So these are detox enzymes inside the cells and inside the liver. So the liver is actually working faster, and all of your cells are working faster. So they can actually process more toxins when you're in a fasted state. So like all around, we're hitting it from every angle, right? We're releasing the toxins. We're also getting rid of them faster. We're binding them and making sure that they make an exit with our hydration and our pooping.
And this is why I think too, it's really important to avoid just diving into a hardcore, intense fast without having the means of helping your body remove the toxins, because I think that's when people feel crappy when they're doing a detoxification program, because you're literally letting the toxins into your bloodstream. So that's when people have headaches and fatigue and nausea. Those are normal responses of your body to an increased toxin load. And so for people who have ever tried like a cleanse before and just felt totally terrible on it, it's probably because you overdid it without then supplying your body with the means to improve the detoxification process, because we are exposed all the time to things in our environment, in our food, even emotionally, things that act as toxins that slow that detoxification process down. So it's really important, again, if you're doing something like a cleanse, to do it under the help of somebody who knows what they're doing, a practitioner, a nutritionist, who could help make sure that your body is handling it well and give you tools and resources in case you are not handling it well.
Absolutely. I am not a fan of willy-nilly fasting or detoxes or cleanses of any kind. And it's also one of the reasons, like a bone broth cleanse or a juice cleanse, another reason I'm not a fan is because, yes, you will be in a hypocaloric state. So you will be increasing the amount of toxins that are getting released from fat cells, but they've got nowhere to go if there's no food in your belly, no fiber, nothing to bind onto them. So for some people who have really robust detoxification systems, it's not an issue. I am somebody who has always struggled with detoxification. I think like genetically, I just am not a good detoxifier. I'm very sensitive to smells, to smoke, perfumes, like any of that kind of stuff. And that was one of the things that I noticed right away when I tried to fast is I got nauseous. I got a headache. I felt terrible. And I was like, what is going on? And so really the reason I've done so much research on this is because I am like the worst patient to have. Like everything goes wrong with me. And so I'm like trying to figure this out. So I've actually done a ton of research on how to support detoxification during a fast. And I have a special detox meal plan in the program and some additional tools and strategies for making sure that those toxins are bound and released so that they don't get reabsorbed, because we can reabsorb toxins if they sit in the gut for too long. Even if they made their way out, you can reabsorb them. So we want to avoid that process as much as possible. And I think that I've done a good job of it because the people who do the program feel really good. I don't have people who felt the way that I felt when I was first learning about it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I wanted to add one more thing about the detox piece is it's not just a matter of like feeling lousy. You're actually re-exposing yourself to chemicals that are harmful. And that's potentially dangerous. And what we find in the research is that an increase in toxins can actually promote weight gain and slow down the metabolism, which is exactly the opposite of what we're going for if we're trying to maintain a healthy weight, if we're trying to improve our health. And so it's really important. I just want to stress the importance of supporting good detoxification anytime you do a fast of any kind, or anytime somebody even diets, right? It's that hypocaloric. If you're in a calorie deficit of any kind, you're going to be releasing toxins from your fat cells. So you always want to support detoxification with any kind of weight loss program, fasting program, or cleanse of any kind.
Absolutely. And again, some of the important keys for that are things like proper hydration and getting enough fiber. And are there any supplements that you like to recommend that help with detoxification? I know one of the ones I like to recommend to people is glutathione, like a liposomal glutathione, which is one of the molecules that helps your body detox. Another way to get it is taking N-acetylcysteine, but in order to convert it to glutathione in your body, you need selenium, and not everybody has enough selenium. So like I recommend glutathione. I don't know what you are, if there's any supplements you recommend to kind of help with that detoxification process.
Yeah, definitely. So inside of the program, I go into this in a bit more detail, but I'll touch on some of the highlights. I think the very first place is to start with detoxification is to make sure the exit routes are open, right? That person is pooping every day, that they're peeing and well hydrated, right? Because and that they're exercising, because exhaling, pooping, and peeing are the main way. We also lose some toxins in sweat. But I don't typically recommend sauna use during a fast. I think it can just kind of overstress your system, but certainly outside of fasting, any kind of sweating is going to be fantastic way to support detoxification. So one, are the exit routes open? Because we don't want to push detoxification if the exit route is closed, right? That's just going to make somebody feel worse. So some of the things that I'll recommend are some supplemental fibers, which can help. Some soluble fiber I find is the more gentle and better for making sure things are moving along really nice and easily. And then magnesium can be really helpful if somebody's a little bit sluggish or a little bit stuck, or their stools are a little bit dry or kind of cracked. Then we want to hydrate the bowels, and magnesium helps draw water into the bowels and softens the stool. So the magnesium and fiber are really great. And that's something I recommend a lot of people try during their fast, just as a way to make sure things just keep moving nice and smooth. And then the hydration piece is really important. So are the exit routes open? Once we know that they're open, then the second step would be to add in binders. So fiber being a great binder, but there are other binders like citrus pectin, activated charcoal. There's some like certain types of clay. There's certain other like crustacean shells. There's some interesting binders out there. But those can be really great for grabbing onto the toxins. And then once they bound them, they don't release them. So it's a great way to make sure that those don't get reabsorbed. And the binders can be really helpful for anybody who might feel like a little headachy or not great if they're doing a fast or a cleanse. And then the third step would be to push detoxification more, right? But you have to make sure that the exit routes are open and that the binders are on board before you would push it harder with something like glutathione or heavier exercise or something that would accelerate those detox enzymes even more. So I think it's really important to go about it in a stepwise manner and have people start and kind of find the right amount of detoxification that their body's ready for, and not to ever push it past that point, because you're just going to make somebody actually feel worse, and you harm in the process.
Yeah. And then lifestyle wise, what are some important things for people to keep in mind with, like, you mentioned the exercise, keeping exercise gentle. What about as far as like stress coping techniques and getting enough sleep? How do those things fit into the program too?
Yeah. So during the program, there's a daily checklist. We have the fasting meal plan, the hydration piece, 30 minutes of exercise, and then a stress reduction piece. And the idea behind that is that fasting is enhanced, detoxification is enhanced, all of the healing and reparative benefits that you get during fasting are absolutely magnified by being in a relaxation state. It enhances everything about that. And autophagy, like all of the healing benefits that you get from fasting, you're just going to enhance them even more if you can get your body into a relaxed state. So while it is absolutely possible to go to work and do all of your daily activities, I encourage everybody to have one activity every day during their 10-day program that they're doing some kind of stress reduction. And I really want it to be something that feels joyful, something that they look forward to, maybe the best part of their day, right? Not something that they're like, oh, something else to check off my list. So in the program, I have like a list of ideas, but it can be like sunbathing. It can be taking a hot bubble bath. It can be a kitchen dance party, like just something that, or like listening to a comedy show, something that makes you laugh, something that, giving somebody like cuddling on the couch, just something that just puts you at ease, that fills up your cup, that puts your body into a relaxed state. It does not have to be on a cushion with a meditation thing. Although there's nothing wrong with that. It can absolutely do that. But I want to make it really approachable for people.
Right.
Just do something fun, something that just makes you go,
Yes, so important. Yes. I love that part of the prescription, quote unquote. Is like doing something you enjoy, because I do think people sometimes feel that they need permission to take time for themselves, which we're all about on this podcast, always wanting to give our listeners permission to take care of yourself and put your needs first. Because I think we struggle, especially women struggle with that. But even just as a society, we struggle to slow down and do something enjoyable instead of getting so fixated on productivity and efficiency and like all the
serious things.
Yeah, all the things, being kind of in that rat race of just being very intentional to slow down, enjoy life. I mean, you only get one, right? So you might as well actually enjoy some of the details of it. So I love that part. That's so awesome. So how... let's see. So we're recording this episode on May 31st. Deena, when is your next Fasting Fix program that you offer, and how do our listeners join in on that program with you?
Yeah. So the program I run once a year, and I just run it in the fall. So typically I'll start right after Labor Day. I feel like everybody's kind of back home, they're back into their routine and their schedule. It's a much easier time to implement something like that. So the next round will be coming up this fall. I just finished a 10-day reset, and that's kind of the bite-sized version of the Fasting Fix program. So we have the bigger program that has the labs, and we do repeated fasts. And then the bite-sized program is just one fast. And I do that 4 times a year. So like once a quarter. And that allows people who go through my program to then continue on a maintenance schedule and do a fast with me once a quarter. And it also gives people an opportunity to be like, hey, like I had such a great time on this fast, like come with me and try it out. Because I think fasting can be really intimidating. It can certainly be scary. And I do want to point out that it's not for everybody. So Eleni, you are not allowed. I'm sorry. Eleni is pregnant right now. We have a brand new baby. Right. And we'll be nursing that baby, right? And fasting is not appropriate for people who are pregnant, who are nursing. It's not appropriate for children. It's not great for people who have a history of disordered eating, where any kind of food restriction could be triggering for them, emotionally or psychologically. And then the other person that we're really careful with are the elderly. So anybody over the age of 75, we have to make modifications for, because we don't want them to lose any muscle or become frail as a result of fasting. So we have to be a little bit more careful about how long the fast is, and really diligent about their refeeding if they're going to do fasting. Because a lot of people in that age group can benefit a ton from doing a fast, but we want to make sure that we're not causing any harm in the process. So those are kind of the populations that need to be a little bit more careful about doing a fast at all. But the program is in the fall, and I'd love to have you in the future, but I won't let you in.
Yes.
Yes, that's okay. Well, me and my husband would like to do it, so we'll keep in touch and we'll figure out when the mini one is. I think we would start there.
Yeah. And so how do people, and we'll include it in the show notes as well, links, but I always just like to have it on the recording. How do people reach out to you? How do they find you? How do they sign up for either the mini fasting or the whole fasting fix?
Yeah, everything is on my website. So if you go to therealfoodnutritionist.com, there's links up at the top. You can book a free call with me if you're like, I'm really interested, but I'm not sure if this is right for me. Just call me. I'd love to chat with you and answer any questions that you have. There's also the link for the 10-day reset is what the mini version is called. And then the fasting fix is the full program. And those links are right at the top of my page if anybody wants to take a look.
Perfect.
Really cool. Really cool. I'm excited. And Deena, you carry such smart hope with you. Like you resonate like hopefulness, and you're just so smart. So thank you for being a light in our world. This is really exciting. And I even feel like I'm like, okay, I need to do this before the fall. How am I going to do this? So I will just stalk everything about you, Deena, and I'll figure something out. But this is exciting, and it feels really hopeful, and it feels like a good answer to the modern body that doesn't quite feel its best.
Now I know too, on social media, you share information about when the next fasting fix program is going to be, or the 10-day reset. Can you share your Instagram handle, or if you have Facebook or anything like that, can you share those handles as well?
Yeah, so that's _Real Food Nutritionist is my Instagram, and I think Facebook is just the Real Food Nutritionist. So kind of all the same there. I would love for you to come follow me there. I talk a lot about fasting and metabolic health and gut health on my Instagram. And then if you go to my website and join my email list, I have a free guide to how to find real olive oil. Spoiler alert, most olive oil is fake. So I'd love to give you that guide. And then if you get on my email list, you definitely find out about the next 10-day reset.
Perfect. Awesome.
I love it.
Well, anything you want to add, anything we didn't go over or forgot, or did we manage to check all the boxes?
I know. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place with the way that I shared the information. So hopefully it made sense to people.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
Really want to reiterate that a tool like this is a very therapeutic tool, and you can make a lot of progress in a short amount of time, which I love about this tool. But like I said, fasting isn't always the right tool for everybody. So it's important to know when it's the right tool and who it's the right tool for, because it's really effective for people that their bodies are ready for that kind of a thing. And for somebody who is dealing with exhaustion and like not getting enough to eat during the day, and they're dealing with crazy fatigue, they're just burnt out, burning the candle at both ends, those aren't the people who should do something like a fast. And I think it's just really important to, in our modern world of like headlines and clickbait, to talk a little bit about the nuance of like, it's a very therapeutic and effective tool for somebody who's in the right place to receive it. If you're burning the candle at both ends, then I would, like, get your sleep, take care of yourself, and revisit fasting when your body's a little bit more ready. I want people to know that like fasting is a stress on your body. It is like that hard workout. So you want to be in a place where it's going to do you a lot of good and not just kind of add to your exhaustion or fatigue.
Absolutely. That's so important.
Yeah. This was really enlightening. I'm excited. So thank you, Deena. That's really awesome.
Yes, I think our listeners are going to benefit a lot from this particular episode, and then from following you on your social media and learning more from you, and joining your mailing list, and hopefully joining your 10-day reset or fasting fix programs, because I think they offer so much benefit and you've done so much work to really simplify it. So I really encourage all of our listeners to hop on board with Deena and follow her for either a 10-day reset or a fasting fix, and just benefit from her knowledge, because obviously she's amazing. So
yes. Yeah, you developing this program with all that information that you gained working at that clinic, it's brilliant, and good job. I mean, that's really neat.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm on my like 4th year of running the program. And so I feel like it's gotten better and better, and fine-tuned it every time. So I feel like at this point, it's like I've simplified it as much as I can and tried to make it as effective as I can without overwhelming people with too much information, because I sure love the science side of things. So
yes, that's why I have Kay on here, because Kay brings everything back to reality.
That's right. Like, that's right. Yeah, you guys talk nerdy to me, and that's good. All right. Well, thank you, Deena, for your information, and for our listeners, go be renegades.
Go be renegades.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast.
Please keep in mind that this podcast is an educational service that provides general health information. The content on this podcast is not a substitute for direct, personal, professional medical care and diagnosis. You should always talk to your doctor before making a dietary or lifestyle change. Go be renegades!
Go be renegades!